April 2020, Tim Cook looked back at a decade of leadership with undeniable pride. Under his watch, Apple had become the world's first trillion-dollar market cap company. The iPhone had grown nearly fivefold, and he had successfully introduced massive hits like the Apple Watch and AirPods. But the numbers told a second, more sobering story. The core hardware business, the very foundations of the company, was hitting a wall where iPhones, iPads, and Macs had become a natural mature products, where growth was no longer about finding new customers, but simply waiting for existing ones to upgrade, compounded by a trade war with China and the sudden global shock of the COVID 19 pandemic. Cook found himself cooked at a crossroad. Today, we are going to dissect the Harvard Business School case, the Apple Incorporations in 2020. We will explore how Apple pivoted, pivoted from selling devices to selling an ecosystems, analyze the Me Too strategy of their services, and finally reflects on how these high-level strategies can be applied to our own academic community. And to understand the 2020, we first must understand the Apple's DNA. Since the 1976, Apple has been defined by vertical integrations, while IBM, company like IBM and Microsoft created an open systems that anyone could clone. Steve Jobs insisted on proprietary designs. This closed approach leads to a 62% drop in income, and by the 1984, and Jobs eventually exits. The company spent the next decade near bankruptcy, where at one point being only 19 days away from the total collapse of the company. But when the Jobs returned in 1997, he brought a culture of extreme secrecy and focus, slicing about 50 products lines down to just about 4 products. And this history is crucial. Why? Because it explains why Apple's 2020 pivot was so difficult. The company was built to be a hardware fortress. If we actually seen at the paper or the data, where in 2015 Apple sold about 231 million iPhones, but by 2019 that number had dropped to only about 180 million, and that is a significant decline for a company's primary revenue driver. The iPad followed a similar trend, where it's peaking in 2014 before facing 5 years of declining sales. So, why was this happening? First, market saturations. In the developed countries, everyone who wanted a smartphone already had one. Second, the smartphone Play-2 innovations had already slowed down so much that consumers didn't feel the need to buy the newest model for every year. And finally, there was the price. The iPhone 17 Pro Max had a bill of materials of about 490 US dollars. Yet, yet, it sold up to 1,499 US dollar. In emerging markets, Apple was simply becoming too expensive to compete with the low-cost Chinese rivals like Xiaomi and Oppo. But Tim Cook's genius was realizing that while he couldn't sell more phones, he could sell more to the people who already had them. So in 2020, Apple's installed base exceeded 1 billion people, and this gave Apple's a captive audience. Then Cook launched an aggressive suite of services. The financial logic was undeniable. The services segment boosted a 64% gross margin. It's nearly double that of the hardware products. And by the Q4 of 2019, services alone were generating about $15 billion of annual run rate. Today, we saw the launch of Apple's Music, which quickly reached about 60 million subscribers. And we also saw the Apple Pay, you know, that one pay if you were using an iPhone where you can just tap your phone to the payment machine and you would just get charged because it would um, getting linked to your credit card or debit card or your banking account. And it is that technology captured 47% of US mobile payment user, and that's very very much. And then we saw the bold 6 billion investment into the Apple TV original content, of course. Even though these were Me Too services, meaning that they weren't actually original ideas because, you know, the Apple Music, the Spotify did it first, and also the Apple TV, which is the Netflix, also did it first. So yeah, it's not their original idea, but Apple's advantage was its sleek integrations and privacy focus to all of their devices. And we cannot overlook the wearable, the wearable, home, and also accessories segment. Um, Cook famously claimed that this business was the size of a Fortune 200 company. The Apple Watch went from some disappointing launch to capturing nearly about 50% of the global smartwatch market by 2020. You know what even more impressive? The AirPods. You guys must know the AirPods. You guys, if you never heard about the AirPods, I guess you need to stop maybe you need to learn more, or you're just simply a child. Despite the early criticisms that removing the headphone jack was Apple arrogance, the company sold an estimated, what is this? Oh my gosh. Okay, never mind. The company, whoa, oh yeah, the airports, yeah. Where despite of the early criticism because they were removing the headphone jack, and people are calling it Apple arrogance, the company is sold estimatedly about around 60 million pairs in 2019 alone. 60 million pairs. That's very. That's about, yeah, 120 million single AirPods. Yeah, and these products did more than just generate revenues. They acted um, some kind some kind of glue, making it even harder for a user to ever leave the Apple ecosystem. And now we move to the one of the most important part of our task. How do we apply Apple's services pivot to our international class program academic community, where in our school, the Muhammadiyah Gombong junior and senior high school, we often fall to some kind of hardware hardware first trap. So it's like hardware first, and that's a trap. We view the enrollment of a student as the sales of a product. But once the students graduate, the sales is over. You know, you know what I mean? Yeah. If you think like Tim Cook, the students' enrollment is just the beginning of their entry into the ICP ecosystem. Let's just call it something like that. It sounds cool, the ICP ecosystem. Yeah, never mind. Let's back. How can we create recurring community value? We should consider the service-based relationship. This could mean creating alumni tracking systems that provide a professional networking for life. It could mean a lifelong learning portals where our graduates can return for certifications or new skills years after they leave our classroom. So we aren't just selling about 3 years of school, nah. We are providing a lifetime academic services. And then, but here's the thing. You know that Apple also faces a dilemma where should their services work on other devices? Similarly, as we expand the international class program, we face an open versus closed dilemma. If we keep our ICP standard closed as a closed source, or something like an exclusive only to our branch. Similarly, sorry, yeah, um, we uh, we will maintain a premium brand. But however, if we open our systems, so it's like open source, perhaps by doing some licensing or curriculum to other regional branches, we grow faster, but we risk losing our distinctiveness. And furthermore, we must embrace Apple's privacy as a service, or PaaS mentality. In an age of digital noises, our ICP school systems can differentiate itself by being some kind of safe hubs for students' data, professional integrity, and also high value community ethics. Yeah, so we must ask, What is our efforts? What is the one add-on service that we can provide to make our students and parents so loyal that they wouldn't dream of switching to another school systems? And then finally, we conclude with our reflections on the leadership. The transition from Steve Jobs to Tim Cook was one of the most storied successions in history. Jobs was a fanatical design visionary. He wanted to put a dent in the universe, while Cook is some kind of analytical, operational master or something like that, where he wanted to build a sustainable yet efficient machine. My distinct takeaway is this vision started the company, but system scaled the company. Steve Jobs gave Apple its souls, but Tim Cook gave Apple its future by recognizing that the hardware market would eventually get mature. In our own leadership roles within the ICP, whether are we are teacher or we are students, we must recognize which phase are we in. Do we need to think different and innovate a new program? Or do we need to be like Cook, analyzing our installed base of students and parents to ensure we are providing the highest margin of value and service? Apple in 2020 proved that even the greatest giants must pivot to survive. And as I complete this task, let us look at our own academic ecosystems with the same critical eye. And I'm Bangkit Bayu Alvaris. Thank you for joining me on these strategic discussions. Let's continue to push our boundaries and also stay critical, stay rational, and see you in the next time. Goodbye.